The morning sun painted everything gold on the research planet Kepler-4 for to be Dr. Min-hee. Park sipped her coffee while looking at the crystal samples on her desk. These weren't ordinary rocks. They glowed with their own inner light and could store more energy than anything humans had ever discovered. Another breakthrough day, she whispered to herself, smiling. Min-hee loved her work here. The research station felt like home now. With its 43 scientists and support staff, it would become like family over the past 3 years. The planet itself was beautiful. Purple grass swayed in the breeze, and the twin moons hung in the amber sky even during daytime. No dangerous animals, perfect weather, and crystals that could change how humans powered their ships and cities. It was paradise. Dr. Park? Lieutenant Ji-won Kim's voice cracked through the peaceful morning. The young communications officer sounded worried. We've got company. Min-hee set down her coffee and walked to the main lab where Gi-won was staring at his screens. The radar showed multiple contacts approaching fast, too fast to be friendly. Many men, he asked, though she already knew this wasn't good news. 12 ships, coming in attack formation, Gi-won replied, his fingers dancing across the controls. They're not responding to our identification signals through the labs. Big windows, Min-hee could see dark shapes growing larger in the sky. These weren't the friendly supply ships that visited every month. These vessels looked like sharks, all smooth curves and weapon ports. She'd seen pictures of ships like these in the military briefings her father had shown her. Corvani Empire, she whispered. The insect-like aliens were known throughout the galaxy for taking what they wanted. They'd been expanding their territory for decades, crushing anyone who got in their way. Send them the standard greeting, Min-hee ordered, but her hands were already moving to the emergency panel. Tell them we're a peaceful research station, under Earth's protection. Ji-won's voice echoed through the station's speakers as he broadcast their message. Unknown vessels, this is Kepler Research Station. We are a civilian scientific facility. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions. The response came in the form of bright, green plasma beams. The station's shields lit up like a rainbow as the energy weapons struck. Alarms started screaming. The building shook so hard that Min-hee had to grab the lab table to stay standing. Shields at 60%, someone shouted from across the lab. All staff to emergency stations, Min-hee commanded through the intercom. She'd trained for this moment but never believed it would actually happen. The second wave of attacks hit harder. The lights flickered and sparks flew from damaged equipment. Through the windows, Min-hee could see the Corvani ships circling like vultures, their weapons charging for another strike. Shields failing, Ji-won yelled. We've got maybe 2 minutes before they're gone completely. Min-hee ran to the emergency communication station. Her fingers flew across the controls, setting up a transmission to Earth. The quantum relay would take the message across the galaxy in seconds, if it worked. This is Dr. Min-hee Park, Kepler Research Station. She spoke into the transmitter. We are under attack by Corvani Imperial forces. Station defenses are failing. Civilian casualties expected. Another plasma blast shook the building. Ceiling tiles crashed down around her. The smell of burning electronics filled the air. All research staff are non-combatants, she continued, her voice staying calm despite the chaos. We never threatened anyone. We were just studying crystals and trying to help humanity. The third wave of attacks destroyed the shields completely. The Corvani ships moved closer, their weapons glowing with deadly light. Min-hee could see the insect-like pilots. Through their cockpit windows, cold, calculating, without mercy. Tell my father, she said into the transmitter. Tell Admiral Donghan Park that his daughter did her duty. Tell him the crystals we discovered could change everything. Don't let our work die with us. The ceiling above her started to crack. Chunks of concrete and metal began falling.
Tell him.
Minnie's voice broke slightly. Tell him I love him, and I'm proud to be his daughter. Tell him to make them pay for what they've done to innocent people. The transmission cut off as the roof collapsed, thousands of light years away. Admiral Donghan Park stood in his command center orbiting Earth, The decorated officer had fought in 3 wars and commanded fleets across the galaxy. He'd seen battle, death, and destruction. But nothing had prepared him for this message. He played his daughter's final transmission 3 times, each word burning into his memory. Around him, his staff watched their commander's face change from professional calm to something they'd never seen before: cold. Focus rage. Captain Taman Lee, his trusted aide, approached carefully. "Sir, what are your orders?" Admiral Park's voice was quiet, but carried the weight of thunder. "Prep the Vengeance for immediate departure. Send word to all fleet commanders in the sector." "What should I tell them, sir?" The admiral's jaw tightened. His daughter's voice still echoed in his mind. His little girl who loved crystals and dreamed of making the galaxy a better place. His little girl who was gone. "Tell them it's personal now." 3 days after the Kepler massacre, something strange was happening across human space. Fleet Admiral Heian Wu Chang stood in the Corvani High Command's war room, his 4 insect-like eyes scanning holographic displays that showed human ship movements across 12 star systems. "This makes no sense," he muttered, his mandibles clicking in frustration. The tall, praying mantis-like alien had conquered 47 worlds for the Empire. But he'd never seen anything like this. Colonel Nexstar, his tactical advisor, pointed at the glowing star map with a clawed appendage. "Look at this, General. The humans have abandoned their defensive positions at the Titan mining colony. They're leaving billions of credits worth of resources completely unprotected. And here," another officer added, "they've pulled their entire 3rd fleet away from the trade routes near Alpha Centauri. Those routes generate massive profits for them." General Dekvar studied the patterns, his compound eyes processing information like a living computer. In his 300 years of military service, he'd learned that humans were predictable. They followed their military handbooks, protected their trade routes, and always chose the most logical, strategic positions. But this was different. This was chaos, Sir Nexstar continued. "They're all moving toward the Kepler sector. 7 complete battle groups, including ships we've never seen before. Their experimental dreadnought just appeared on our sensors." "How many ships total?" Dekvar asked. "Over 200 warships, sir. That's nearly a third of their entire fleet." The general's eyes narrowed. "For 1 destroyed research station? Impossible. This must be a massive feint. They're trying to trick us into thinking they care about that insignificant outpost." What the Corvini couldn't understand was that human military doctrine had just been completely rewritten, not by generals or admirals, but by something far more powerful: a father's grief. Admiral Donghan Park stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, watching space fold and twist as more human ships dropped out of hyperspace. Each vessel that arrived carried crews who had heard about Kepler, who had seen the footage of the burning research station, who had lost friends in the attack. The massive dreadnought Retribution emerged from a ripple in space-time, its hull bristling with weapons that could crack planets. On the main screen, Admiral So-Young Choi appeared. The stern woman had commanded fleets for 20 years, but her eyes showed something Park had never seen before: raw fury. "Donghaean," she said simply. "I heard about Minhei." Park nodded. So-Young had known his daughter since she was a child. Amin. He had called her Aunt So-Young and sent her pictures of every crystal she discovered. "The Corvain think they can murder our people and face no consequences," Park replied, his voice steady, but his hands clenched into fists. "But they are about to learn how wrong they are." More ships kept arriving. The battlecruiser Thunder dropped out of hyperspace, followed by the carrier Eagle's Nest with its complement of fighter squadrons. Captain Jae-Soon Kim's destroyer group appeared next, their hulls painted with memorial messages for the Kepler victims. "Sir," Captain Taman Lee approached with a datapad. "Intelligence has identified the Corvani commander responsible for the attack. Fleet Marshal Kethfer, of the 3rd Expansion Fleet. He's currently stationed at Proxima Outpost with his command." Ship Park took the pad and stared at the alien's picture. Kethfer looked like a giant praying mantis wearing military decorations. His file showed 43 successful territorial acquisitions. A polite way of saying he'd destroyed 43 peaceful colonies. "This insect thinks killing civilians makes him a warrior," Park said quietly. He's about to learn the difference. Between murder and war, Lee hesitated. Sir Command is asking about rules of engagement. The politicians want to know if we're planning a rescue mission or a punitive strike. Admiral Park's expression grew cold. Send a message to all human forces in the sector. Tell them the rules of engagement are suspended. This is no longer a peacekeeping mission. The message spread through the human fleet like wildfire. On every ship, in every corridor, the same words were repeated. Rules of engagement suspended. But it was the phrase that followed that really mattered. On the destroyer Lightning, Captain Min Soo-yoon scratched words into the bulkhead beside his command chair. Now it's personal. In the fighter bays of the Eagle's Nest, pilots painted the same message on their cockpits. Now it's personal. In the engine rooms, the weapons lockers, the medical bays, everywhere humans gathered, the same phrase appeared. Now it's personal. The Corvani surveillance networks detected the phrase spreading through human communications, but their translators couldn't make sense of it. To them, war was about territory, resources, and strategic advantage. The concept of personal motivation in military operations was completely foreign. Their communications are full of emotional references, reported the Empire's intelligence chief. They keep mentioning the dead researcher's family connections, her personal achievements, even her favorite foods. It's completely irrelevant to military planning, but it wasn't irrelevant to humans. Every person on every ship in the fleet had someone they loved, parents, children, friends, colleagues. The attack on Kepler hadn't just destroyed a research station, it had shown every human in the galaxy that the Corvani would kill anyone, anywhere, for any reason. Admiral Park stood before his fleet commanders on the main screen, their faces showing the same cold determination he felt. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, we're not here to capture territory or secure resources. We're here because they killed our people. They killed innocents who never hurt anyone. They killed my daughter. His voice remained steady, but everyone could hear the steel beneath the words. Find Fleet Marshal Kethver. Find every ship, every commander, every soldier who participated in the Kepler attack, and show them what happens when you make it personal with humans. The hunt was about to begin. Fleet Marshal Kethver stood in his command center, staring at the tactical display with growing confusion. In his 200 years of military service, he had conquered 17 star systems for the Corvani Empire. He understood war as a simple equation. Apply force, take territory, move on to the next target. But this was different. This was madness, sir. His tactical officer buzzed through his insect-like voice synthesizer. The human fleet has bypassed our mining operation at Rigel 7. They're ignoring billions of credits worth of resources. Kethver's 4 eyes tracked the human ship movements on the holographic display. The enemy vessels were moving in a direct line toward his position, abandoning every strategic advantage they could have taken. They're not conquering territory, his intelligence officer reported. They're not capturing resources. They're just following us. Following us. Kethver's mandibles clicked in irritation. Military forces don't follow individual commanders. They follow strategic objectives. The humans weren't following strategic objectives. They were following him, Lieutenant Commander. In-Ho Park, no relation to the Admiral, monitored Corvani communications from his station aboard the cruiser Justice. The young intelligence officer had been decoding alien transmissions for 3 years, but he'd never heard anything like this. Sir, he called to his captain, the Corvani are panicking. They can't understand why we're not taking their undefended positions. Captain Wu Jin Lee smiled grimly. They don't understand humans very well, do they? On the bridge of the Vengeance, Captain Ji-Hoon Nam studied the 3-dimensional star map floating before him. The young officer had graduated from the academy 2 years ago and had dreamed of exploring the galaxy. Instead, he found himself planning the hunt for his best friend's killer. Min-hee had been like a sister to him. They'd grown up together in the same neighborhood, attended the same schools, shared the same dreams of making the galaxy a better place. She'd sent him pictures of every crystal she discovered, excited about how they could help humanity. Now, she was gone, and Ji-Hoon's grief had turned into something cold and focused. They're running toward the Vega system, he reported to Admiral Park. Kethver is trying to reach the Corvani stronghold at Vega Station. If we intercept them at the asteroid belt, we can cut them off. Admiral Park studied the tactical display. The asteroid belt was a dangerous place for a space battle. Floating rocks the size of mountains, unpredictable gravitational fields, and limited maneuvering room. A smart commander would avoid fighting there. Do what Park ordered without hesitation. I don't care if we lose half the fleet. Kethver doesn't leave that system alive. The order spread through the human fleet like wildfire. On every ship, crews prepared for battle with an intensity that scared even veteran officers. These weren't soldiers following orders, they were family members seeking justice. The asteroid belt of the Vega system stretched for millions of kilometers, filled with rocks ranging from pebbles to planetoids. The Corvani fleet tried to use the asteroids as cover, hiding behind the larger ones while their sensors searched for escape routes. They didn't find any. The humans had surrounded them completely. All ships, Admiral Park's voice echoed through. The fleet communications, remember why we're here. Remember Minhe, remember Kepler. Show them what happens when you hurt our people. The battle began with a fury that shook the asteroids themselves. Human ships dove into the rocky maze with reckless abandon, their weapons blazing. The cruiser Righteous Anger smashed through a Corvani frigate, its captain screaming for the researchers. As his ship's hull cracked from the impact, Captain Sol Young Choi, commanding the dreadnought Retribution, watched a Corvani destroyer. Trying to escape through a gap in the asteroids, instead of using her long-range weapons, she ordered her ship forward at full speed. "Ma'am," her helmsman called out, "we're going to ram them," Good Choi replied coldly. Minhe was going to name her first crystal discovery after me. These monsters took that away from her. The Retribution struck the Corvani destroyer at full speed, its massive bulk crushing the enemy vessel like an egg. The impact sent both ships spinning into an asteroid, but Choi's ship survived while the destroyer exploded in a ball of fire. Smaller. Human vessels used tactics that would have been considered suicidal in any other battle. Fighter squadrons dove directly into Corvani formations, their pilots screaming for Minhe. As they crashed into enemy hulls, frigates rammed cruisers. Destroyers used themselves as guided missiles. Kethver watched the battle from his command. Ship, his compound eyes wide with disbelief. "They're destroying themselves to get to us," he told his officers. This isn't military strategy. This is insanity. But it was working. The human fleet was taking massive casualties, but they were tearing the Corvani forces apart. Every human ship that died took 2 or 3 Corvani vessels with it. "Sir," his navigation officer reported, "we have a clear path to hyperspace. We can escape if we leave now." Kethver looked at the tactical display one more time. His fleet had been reduced from 12 ships to 4. The humans were still coming, still fighting, still dying to reach him. "Retreat," he ordered. Full speed to hyperspace. The surviving Corvani ships fled the asteroid belt, leaving behind the wreckage of their comrades. The humans had won, but the victory tasted bitter. They'd lost almost half their fleet, and their primary target had escaped. On the bridge of the Vengeance, Admiral Park stared at the casualty reports. 37 ships destroyed, over 2,000 crew members dead or wounded. In any normal battle, this would have been considered a catastrophic defeat. But this wasn't a normal battle. This was personal, Sir Ji-hoon Nam reported. Maintenance. Crews are already working on the damaged ships. They're painting messages on the hulls. Park nodded. He'd seen the messages appearing throughout the fleet on bulkheads, on weapons, on the sides of ships. The same words repeated over and over. "Now it's personal," Trek Kethver, Park ordered. "Find out where he's going." "This isn't over," the hunt continued. Across the galaxy, human ships pursued the surviving Corvani forces. They ignored strategic targets, abandoned defensive positions, and threw away every rule of military engagement. Because sometimes war isn't about strategy or resources or territory. Sometimes it's about making sure the people who hurt your family never get the chance to hurt anyone else's. The Corvani Empire was about to learn that lesson the hard way. Dr. Veltar's 6 legs shook as he entered the Grand Council chamber of the Corvani Empire. The ancient insectoid had served as the Empire's chief xenopsychologist for 60 years, studying the minds of dozens of alien species. But nothing had prepared him for what he'd discovered about humans. The chamber was massive, with walls that stretched up into darkness. 12 Supreme Commanders sat on elevated platforms, their compound eyes glowing in the dim light. At the center, Supreme Commander Zekar, the most feared military leader in Corvani history, waited for the report. "Speak," Zekar commanded, his voice echoing through the chamber like grinding metal. Veltar activated his holographic display, showing intercepted human communications from the past weeks. Studying human behavior patterns following the Kepler incident, what I've discovered challenges everything we know about military psychology. The display showed footage of human ships abandoning profitable mining operations, leaving strategic positions undefended and converging on a single target with no apparent tactical value. "The humans," Veltar began, his voice trembling, "they don't fight like any species we've encountered. They don't fight for territory, resources, or even survival. They fight for each other." Commander Nixdell, a veteran of 40 campaigns, clicked his mandibles dismissively. "Impossible. Military forces operate on logic and strategic advantage. Emotional attachments are evolutionary weakness." "That's what I believed too," Veltar replied, manipulating the display to show psychological profiles. "But observe their communications. When they say now it's personal, their entire brain chemistry changes. Stress hormones spike, rational thinking decreases, but focus and determination increase exponentially." The hologram showed brain scans of human pilots before and after hearing about Kepler. The differences were startling. Entire sections of their brains had altered their activity patterns. "The destroyed research station," Veltar continued, "wasn't just a military target too. Them, the human female who died, Dr. Min-hee Park, was the daughter of their fleet admiral. To them, we didn't just attack a facility. We attacked their family." The council chamber fell silent. In Corvani society, offspring were considered independent once they reached maturity. The concept of parents risking valuable military assets for grown children was incomprehensible. Supreme Commander Zekar leaned forward. "You're saying they're willing to sacrifice entire fleets for revenge?" "Worse," Veltar replied, his voice dropping to a whisper. "They're willing to sacrifice themselves. I've analyzed their battle tactics. Every human in their fleet would die before letting Fleet Marshal Kethfer escape. They've turned this into what they call a blood feud." The display showed footage from the asteroid belt battle, human ships ramming Corvani vessels, fighters diving into formations with suicidal determination, captains choosing death over retreat. "Look at this." Veltar highlighted a specific transmission. A human pilot, moments before crashing into one of our destroyers, said, "Tell Minnie's father I kept my promise." They're not just fighting for victory. They're fighting for honor, for memory, for love. Commander Thaxmer, the Empire's chief strategist, studied the data. This explains their irrational movements. They're not following military doctrine. They're following emotional imperatives. Exactly, Veltar confirmed. "I've identified over 40 instances where human forces abandoned strategic advantages to pursue personal vendettas. They captured a Corvani supply depot, but instead of taking the resources, they used it as bait to draw out officers who had participated in civilian attacks." The hologram showed human soldiers painting names on their weapons, not their own names, but the names of the dead from Kepler. Minnie's name appeared hundreds of times across the fleet. "They've created what they call memorial squadrons," Veltar explained. "Fighter groups named after specific victims. The Min-hee squadron has a 100% casualty rate, but they keep reforming with new pilots who volunteer for certain death." Supreme Commander Zekar's compound eyes processed this information. "Are you telling me that their emotional weakness is actually making them stronger?" "In a way, yes," Veltar admitted, "which drives most species to retreat becomes secondary to their need for vengeance. They'll continue fighting with damaged ships, wounded crews, and impossible odds because surrender means dishonoring their dead." Meanwhile, in the depths of space, Fleet Marshal Kethfer was learning this lesson firsthand. Once mighty fleet, had been reduced to 3 ships, constantly running from human forces that appeared everywhere he went, like ghosts seeking revenge. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving another transmission from the human fleet." Kethver's eyes darted to the view screen. He'd been receiving these messages for days, not demands for surrender, not negotiations, just promises of what was coming. Admiral Park appeared on the screen, his face calm, but his eyes holding the promise of death. The human looked tired, older than when this chase began, but his determination had only grown stronger. Fleet Marshal Kethver, Park said quietly, "You killed my daughter. You killed my little girl, who never hurt anyone, who spent her life trying to make the galaxy better. She discovered crystals that could have powered hospitals, schools, homes. For billions of people." Kethver wanted to reply, to explain that it was just military strategy, that personal connections shouldn't matter in warfare. But the words stuck in his throat. "You don't understand what you've done," Park continued. "Min-hee wasn't just my daughter. She was a sister to Ji-hoon, a friend to So-young, a teacher to dozens of young scientists. Every person in this fleet loved her in some way." The transmission showed glimpses of the human fleet ships covered in memorial paintings, crews working with mechanical precision despite their grief, weapon systems maintained with religious devotion. "Now you're going to learn what happens when you make it personal with humans," Park concluded. "We don't just fight for victory. We fight for the people we love. And we never, ever forgive those who take them away." The transmission ended, leaving Kethver staring at a blank screen. For the first time in his military career, the veteran commander felt something he'd never experienced before: genuine fear. Not fear of death, but fear of what the humans had become in their grief. They weren't soldiers anymore. They were something much more dangerous. They were a family seeking justice for their murdered child. And families, Kethver was beginning to understand, would do anything to protect each other. The debris field around Vega Station stretched for thousands of kilometers, a graveyard of twisted metal and shattered dreams. What had once been the Corvani Empire's most powerful fortress now floated in pieces, destroyed by human forces that had swept through the system like an unstoppable storm. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, his eyes fixed on the last remaining Corvani ship. The enemy vessel limped through the wreckage, its hull cracked and bleeding atmosphere into space. 3 weeks of running had brought Fleet Marshal Kethver to this moment, cornered, desperate, and finally understanding what he had unleashed. "Sir," Captain Taemin Lee approached carefully, "our sensors show their weapons are offline. Life support is failing. They're completely defenseless." Park nodded but didn't speak. Around him, the bridge crew worked in focused silence. Weren't the same officers who had started this hunt? Combat had changed them, hardened them, turned them into something colder and more determined. "Admiral," the communications officer called out, "the Corvani ship is broadcasting on all frequencies. They're trying to surrender. Put it through," Park ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing Fleet Marshal Kethver's insectoid face. The alien commander looked different now. His compound eyes were dim, his mandibles trembling. 3 weeks of being hunted had broken something inside him. Human Admiral Kethver's voice was barely audible. "I offer full reparations. For the research station. Resources, territory, prisoners, name your price. And my empire will pay anything you ask." Park stared at the alien for a long moment. "You think this is about money?" I don't understand. What else could it be about?" "You killed my daughter," Park said quietly. "You killed a young woman who spent her life trying to help people. She discovered crystals that could have powered hospitals, schools, homes for billions. She'll never hurt anyone." Kethver's eyes darted around his bridge. His own officers watched him with something that might have been pity. It was a military operation. Civilian casualties were regrettable, but necessary. Necessary? Park's voice remained calm, but everyone on both bridges could hear the steel beneath it. "You murdered 43 innocent people because you wanted their planet. You didn't even bother to check if they were soldiers or scientists." The human fleet had surrounded the Corvani vessel completely. Over 50 ships in a perfect sphere, their weapons trained on the single enemy craft. It looked like a pack of wolves circling wounded prey. "Please," Kethver begged. "I have information about other Corvani operations. I can help you stop future attacks. I can save human lives." Park turned to Captain Lee. "How many ships has he destroyed in his career?" Lee consulted his datapad. 47 civilian stations, sir. Over 12,000 non-combatant casualties." "And you think," Park said, turning back to the screen, "that I should let you live to make deals? You think I should negotiate with someone who has spent his life murdering innocent people?" Captain So Young Choi's voice crackled through the communications from the Retribution. "Donghaean, we're receiving surrender offers from the other surviving Corvani ships. They're promising to withdraw from human space." "Too late," Park replied. "They should have thought about consequences before they started this." On the Corvani ship, Kethver was becoming frantic. "You're making a mistake. Killing me won't bring back your daughter. It won't solve anything." Park's expression didn't change. "You're right. It won't bring Min-hee back. But it will make sure you never hurt anyone else's children." The communications officer on the Vengeance reported, "Sir, we're getting messages from across the human fleet. All ships are ready to fire on your command." Park looked around his bridge one final time. These men and women had followed him. Across the galaxy, had risked everything to hunt down his daughter's killer. They deserve to see justice done. "You can't negotiate with a father's grief," Park said, his words carrying across both fleets. The Vengeance fired its main guns. Brilliant plasma beams lanced through space, piercing the Corvani ship's hull like arrows through paper. The other human ships opened fire simultaneously, their weapons lighting up the debris field with deadly fire. Fleet Marshal Kethver had just enough time to realize that some human responses couldn't be reasoned with or bargained away. Then his ship exploded in a brilliant ball of light that briefly outshone the system's star. As the explosion faded, silence fell over the human fleet. Not the silence of victory, but the silence of completion. The debt had been paid. Justice had been served. Captain Ji-hoon Nam, still manning his station despite the tears on his cheeks, spoke for everyone. "Goodbye, Min-hee. We kept our promise." 3 days later, Admiral Park stood in his daughter's quarters aboard the Vengeance. The room was exactly as she had left it, crystal samples on her desk. Research notes scattered around, photos of her discoveries covering the walls. On her nightstand sat a picture of Min-hee, smiling beside her latest geological find, excited about the possibilities it represented. "Rest now, little one," Park whispered, touching the photo gently. "It's finished. You can sleep peacefully." Now, the human fleet began its journey home, but their message had already spread across the galaxy. Within a week, the Corvani Empire issued new military directives to all fleet commanders. Avoid creating personal grievances with humans at all costs. When they say now it's personal, retreat immediately. Do not engage. Do not negotiate. Run. Order spread to other alien species as well. The Zephyrians, the Hegemony, the Collective, all the great powers of the galaxy began updating their military protocols. A new rule appeared in every strategic manual: do not make it personal with humans. Word traveled through space stations, trading posts, and diplomatic channels. The humans were peaceful, yes. They preferred diplomacy and trade. They were reasonable, fair, and willing to negotiate. But if you hurt their people, if you made it personal, they would hunt you to the ends of the galaxy, and they would never stop. The galaxy had learned a valuable lesson about humanity's greatest strength. It wasn't their technology, though their ships were impressive. It wasn't their strategy, though their tactics were sound. It was their willingness to turn any conflict into a personal crusade, making them the most dangerous enemy anyone could ever create. Years later, when alien cadets studied human military history, they would always return to the same conclusion. Humans don't just fight for victory, they fight for love. And there's nothing more terrifying in the universe than someone fighting for the people they love. The legend of Admiral Park and the Kepler incident became a cautionary tale told throughout the galaxy. And whenever alien commanders heard the phrase "now it's personal," they remembered what happened to Fleet Marshal Kethver. They remembered, and they ran. The end.